Hello, thank you for joining my session today. So today's session is around Einstein Analytics, and for people that have possibly just been given access to it through certain methods, or are interested in getting into the space of Einstein Analytics. So just a little bit from myself. If you haven't met me before, my name's Chris. I'm a senior consultant currently working at Nebula Consulting. And I've been working for a number of years across Sales Cloud and Pardot. And more recently, I've been working quite a bit within Einstein Analytics. And part of the reason for that is because of the Pardot side and B2B Marketing Analytics and how that sort of all looks and works. So within this session, I want to sort of focus on B2B marketing analytics a bit, but focus on the platform as a whole. And there's a number of reasons for that. One being that many customers of Salesforce, Pardot, are getting access to Einstein Analytics purely because Pardot, it comes with B2B marketing analytics, which opens you up to Einstein Analytics in the top and middle tiers. And part of that is different types of users are being given access. So marketers, different Salesforce admins, Pardot admins are being given this. And the reason why Salesforce has gone down this route is, if you've ever used Pardot reporting, it's not the best. It's been improved slightly by being able to bring some of the data from Pardot into Salesforce, but it doesn't give you the full picture. So Salesforce have built this application called B2B Marketing Analytics. It comes with some out-of-the-box dashboards. But what we've experienced recently over the last year or so is Salesforce have been pushing quite hard on moving people into B2B Marketing Analytics to resolve reporting issues. And it comes with a load of out-of-the-box dashboards. However, on most cases, I found that they're not quite enough, and people need to take that next step and start customizing or building their own dashboards. There's also quite a lot of new confusion around the technology because it is a different platform. It is new technology, it's new terminology, things that people aren't familiar with. So what I want to do today is start by going over some of the basics of how analytics works, and then going into showing how it is possible to start building in Einstein Analytics. And part of that is, I think, it seems a lot scarier than it actually is when you're looking at the platform and looking at the terminology, and hopefully we can break some of that down a little bit and make that a bit more familiar, because once you're comfortable giving what you've got, it is reasonably simple to build basic dashboards in the same way that if you could build a dashboard and a report inside Salesforce, it's very likely you'll be able to do the same in Einstein. So to start off with, if we look at some of the terminology that Einstein uses, and breaking that down a little bit, Einstein is a separate platform. Within that platform, you have a collection of apps, and those apps are there to store assets. So you've got data sets, lenses, and dashboards. But when most people start looking at this, they start thinking app and start comparing it to where Salesforce uses app, which is quite a few places. They're not quite sure about what a data set or a lens is. And immediately people get put off because they're not sure what they're meant to be doing. So if you think about this in the terms of an app is basically a folder. So it's the same way that on your desktop or laptop, you've got a folder or a Salesforce report folder. Within that, you give it a name, and you can give different people access to that and to the assets that are stored in there. So within that, it could be that no one has access to it, just you. It's a private app. It could be that you give someone view-only access or give them full administration access to that, depending on their needs. So once we've got our app, inside there we store our data sets, which are a bit like report types. So when you're building a report in Salesforce, the first question Salesforce asks you is, which report type are you going to be using? So for example, accounts and contacts or opportunities. And then once you've done that, you then get to build a report. And in Einstein, they would either be called a lens or a query, but it's basically the same thing. It's something that would power. So when you're building something in Salesforce, you select your report type, you build a report, and then from that report, you get a collection of reports and visualize them in a dashboard. And the application is exactly the same in analytics. The difference being there's a lot more flexibility within the platform. There's a lot more you can do, and it's also a lot faster. So going into the data set piece is something a bit new for people. One of the reasons being it's a shell of a platform when you first get it. When you get Einstein Analytics, it's completely empty. There's nothing in there for you. There's no data. There's nothing for you to play around with, and you have to start building that in. And with B2B Marketing Analytics, Salesforce does a load of the hard work for you. They start off by creating some of these data sets to power the dashboards that they are producing, things that you can work with. But if you need more information, you need to build your own data sets. So when you're looking at the data sets, if you think about it, is you have got your sort of record types, so whether they're opportunities or accounts or contacts, and you need to push those in to Einstein. And the way you do that is through what's called data sync, or previously known as replication. Salesforce then does some bits with that. You then manipulate that data and using data flows and data recipes to create the data sets you need. So there's a bit of magic that goes on inside here that I won't go into detail about, but basically it makes it so that the data that you store can be processed really fast and can give you results really quickly. So ironically, unlike every other product that Salesforce has, it doesn't have lightning in the title, but it is very fast. So once it's all processed that, at the back of it, it will then chuck out some data sets. So whatever you want to produce it. So whether that could be opportunities and products, it could be leads and accounts and stuff. And you have a lot more power over these than with report types in Salesforce, because in Salesforce you can build report types and build custom ones, but you're limited on what you can do. Whereas with Einstein, you can actually merge a lot more data together. So a common scenario that I find is people want to see a full marketing pipeline from lead to opportunity, and looking at all the lead stages, then all the opportunity stages in a single funnel. And in the Salesforce, that's not possible. And if you look at the Salesforce help stages, they will say, what you need to do is build a dashboard, build 2 separate reports, build 2 separate funnel charts, and put them next to each other, and then use that to compare. Whereas in Einstein, you can actually merge that data together into a single data set and build a single funnel report off the back of that. And that's where you can leverage a lot of the power within that. But you need to have a bit of a data mindset if you're going to build any of these data sets. So if you're coming from the Pardot side, you might not have the experience in terms of how to do data modeling and how to structure things in a way that can then be used and replicated. If you're on the Salesforce admin side of things, creating custom objects and fields and linking them together and making them work is something that you're probably more familiar with. So there's a little bit easier to you. So looking at it, the way to look at it is, if you bring in data from Salesforce, everything in Salesforce is joined together with relationships, and those relationships will have an ID. So if I look at an opportunity, that opportunity will give me the account ID. And for me, looking at the report, that's useless. I don't want to see the account ID. I want to see the account name. Same with user. It gives me an 18-string bunch of characters that's just gibberish. I want to see the name of that person. I want to see their job title, so I can bring that into the reports, or use that to filter. So I can say, show me all opportunities owned by this team or such. So what you do within that data manipulation phase in your data flows or in your recipes is to join that data together and then remove the elements that you don't need. So within here, I say, bring all the accounts and find this ID from the opportunity in my account data and bring across the name, and then do the same with my user records. So use the user and owner ID to link, and then bring in the full name and their job title. And then it will then spit out the opportunity data set that you have. And within that data set, you can then remove the ID numbers because you won't need them, but you will have account name, owner name, etc. And then that's what you work with. Salesforce does a load of that work for you when it comes to the B2B marketing analytics stuff, and with Pardot, especially the Pardot stuff, it's done a little bit differently. It's a little bit more of a black box. You don't have as much control over it. But that's the basics of, you bring the data into Einstein, you store it, you manipulate it, and then you create data sets. And that's what you then build your lenses or queries, which are your reports. And then they then are used to sit on your dashboards. But before we run and jump into looking at building a dashboard and playing around with it, there's some things that are quite important that you really need to get an understanding of before we do that. That is, the platform is very powerful, and people quite often will just run at it and just start building stuff. And you're going to waste so much time, energy, potentially money, just by going in and doing something. You're best to start planning. And whenever I speak to anyone on anything to do with B2B marketing analytics or Einstein analytics, the first thing I say is you need to plan, because without the planning, you're not going to get the end result that you need. And that's where people sort of start losing the value of the platform. So the first thing to do is do a workshop. Bring stakeholders together, and get a purpose that you can align with. So you're building a dashboard for a reason, and make sure that everyone understands that reason. How the gathering, obviously these days, is a bit more digital, but having a look at it, get a mixed audience of people at different levels, people that will be using it, the managers that want those people to use it, and discuss what you are trying to build. Come up with a purpose of that dashboard. What's the goal of that dashboard? Why would people want to use it? Because you can spend all the time you want building a dashboard. If no one wants to use it, it's just a waste of space, basically. Once you've done that, you'll then find that there's loads and loads of things that people want to do. So you then need to prioritize that list and say, okay, but these are the most important things. Maybe we've got 20 types of reports that we want to build. Let's focus on those top 5. Test, see how that works, and then get feedback, loop that feedback in, and then start bringing other elements in. Don't try and boil the ocean and go straight for it and try and solve every problem, because you'll either be stuck in a position where you're spending months building dashboards out, or you're just going to end up confusing people because they're just too big. There's too much information in one space. It's better to prioritize and then work your way from there. And then finally, in the planning phase, it's about sketching ideas. It's always great to have some sort of visualization. Personally, I've got a whiteboard on my wall in my office that when I start building a dashboard, the first thing I do is start scribbling on it and thinking, oh, maybe I'm going to put this sort of chart here and maybe that will work here. Because it's quicker to just quickly draw something out to then figure out where you're going to go than it is to start building things and then realizing, oh, actually, I don't want to change that. I need to change all of these things and move it back around. Ideally, if you can do that sort of sketching in the workshop phase as well, you'll get different people's impressions of what things can look like, because you'll find that different people visualize things in a different way, and you might build something that you think works for you, but actually doesn't work for the end users. So it's always good to sort of get an idea of what people are trying to visualize within that. And once you've got that planning phase down, you start thinking, can I build now? Well, no, at that point you should then start thinking about actually designing. Before you get your hands dirty, there's some key elements that you should really think about. And Salesforce have actually done a lot of work. There's a lot of interesting blogs out there, and from Salesforce's UX team and stuff, on importance of designing your dashboards, not just building them. So part of that is clarity. Eliminate any ambiguity that sits within there. Ensure that when someone sits down at a dashboard, they don't have to have an instruction manual to tell them what they're looking at or how to look at it. They know what they're looking at. There's no confusion over what does this chart actually mean? What is this representing? It's very clear. Efficiency, make it so that there's going to be some sort of journey within that user experience of when you look at it. And there's general things to think about, such as if you in English is a left to right language, and as such the eye tends to go to the top left and then start working its way across. And as such, put your designs there, put important things at the top in the top left being the most important, and then work your way across, because that's how people will naturally do it. So don't let people go looking for things. Take them on a bit of a journey of these are the high levels, and then start drilling down with it, things like that. A good dashboard isn't just about trying to solve people's answers immediately. It's about giving people an idea and getting them to then drill down themselves and go, oh, well, what about this? And digging a little bit deeper. Then there's consistency. The likelihood is you're not going to build a single page one dashboard. It's never going to happen. You're going to build one, you're going to build multiple. It might have multiple pages. You might end up with loads of different dashboards. If you think about B2B Marketing Analytics, it comes with a number of dashboards because they're with different purposes. So it's good to get a bit of consistency going on. So when someone looks at a dashboard, they know where to look. They don't have to start relearning where everything is, because key KPIs are in the same place, because things that have grouped together like filters and stuff like that are in a similar position. It just helps with the user experience, and just helps people understand better. And then there's the look and feel of it. The power, one of the biggest powers of analytics is you can make stuff look really nice and take full advantage of that. In Salesforce dashboard, you're very limited of what you can do, but with Einstein, you can go nuts and pretty much do whatever you want. Don't be too hung up on brand colors and trying to make it look like it's on brand with logos and stuff like that. You can really easily build things to basically focus on certain areas, on certain colors, highlight certain things, make things bolder, draw attention to using colors and designs and shapes and things like that. And then once you've got that design thing down, then you start getting into the build phase. And there's things that you need to think about when you're building. So prioritize. So make sure KPIs are front and center. They really should be the star of the show. One of the reasons being, if you think about it, the KPI is important. That's what people are measured on. And if you look at someone like a salesperson, their life is driven by a KPI. They're coin operated. They want to see how much money they're going to make. Where are they to their targets? Because if they don't meet their targets, they're nowhere. So first of all, they want to see, how am I doing against my target? Then they want to see, how can I make that better? So it's really important to get that there and get it front and center. Then there's grouping, to do things like group KPIs, group filters, group similar types of dashboard. You don't want to be sort of looking all over the place trying to find what you're looking for. Make it a lot clearer. You don't want two charts, one at the top, one at the bottom, on the same data, visualized in a different way or segmented in a different way. You want to be able to see it all together. Make sure it's efficient. So make sure the dashboard can run. There's tools built into analytics, such as the dashboard inspector, that are quite powerful, that tells you you've got too many queries here, or maybe you should combine these. You might be throwing things away. Just remember to bin them off. Take advantage of the speed you're given. And then space. Don't be afraid to leave space. Don't cram as many dashboard components on there as possible. Split things out into pages or separate dashboards. Let people explore that information. And I think one way to really visualize this, and the sort of design and build element phase, is to think about looking at this image. So if I showed you this image here and asked you to say how many circles there are on this page, it will take you a little while to figure it out, because everything's the same color, they're all around the same sort of shape, everything might blur into each other a little bit. But if you make a simple change to the color scheme, you can really emphasize those circles and see where they are. And then you can then take it a step further and say, okay, I know there's a number of circles on there, but if I group them together, you can really start seeing where those circles are, and you're starting to take the guesswork out of things. And then take it a step further by labeling, so there's no question of doubt there are 8 circles there, no matter what. Within that, you can change something from potentially a few seconds trying to guess and look and get bored and walk away, to this is the exact number, this is what I'm looking at within here. So if you think about that, that's the same with dashboard components and pages and layouts and things like that. So now you're probably wondering, when am I actually going to get to see something? So let's jump in to a system, and we kick off by looking at a dashboard that's already been built for us. So this is part of the B2B Marketing Analytics, and within this dashboard, you can see we've got some KPIs at the top, we've got some filters at the top, so we've got some of that grouping going on. We've got some nice elements here, so this chart can be changed from clicks to click-through rates to open. Whilst you're looking at this, completely ignore the numbers, because it is a development environment, so the numbers are a load of rubbish. But if I came in here and said, I want to change these things around, maybe I don't just want to move elements around. Maybe I don't want that to be showing unique clicks. I want it to change something else. I can click on the element and I look and I can see that the little pencil icon there is greyed out. I can't edit it. And you'll find this with a lot of the dashboards that are pre-built. And that's because there are two elements to how you can build in analytics. One is through declarative features, so drag and drop clicks. The element is code. And once you start writing in code, it locks the declarative features down. And there's a reason why you would move from declarative into code. And part of that reason would be based around what you can do with it, the types of filters that you can do. For example, using this toggle switch to change what's being displayed on this chart is only possible in code currently. If you ever worked and ever saw analytics before it was rebranded and it was still called Wave, you would found that it was very code heavy. And over the last couple of years, it is moved on leaps and bounds. I haven't seen any Salesforce product that has moved so quickly and changed so much, even to the extent that I remember one time I logged in to the system and I had to relearn where some things were because they had such a radical change a number of years ago. So it's important to understand that. But you can get really far without writing any code. It's only when you want to do some of these more clever things. So if I was starting to look at this dashboard and saying, actually, I want to change these around, the first thing you should do is start from scratch. So copy and clone the dashboard and say, actually, I want a new version of this dashboard and play around with that. And there's two reasons for that. One, these dashboards are a bit like a managed package inside Salesforce. So when Salesforce push an update, they'll push one, you click go, it will change everything back to how it was originally, and you'll lose all of your changes. The second one is it just gives you a lot more. If something goes wrong, you've always got this to fall back on. But I personally would recommend starting from scratch. So if I head back over to the home page, I've got a create button here, and within here I can create an app, which we talked about, like our folders, and dashboard. And with apps and with dashboards, there's two types of apps and dashboards. We've got blank and we've got templates. So from an app perspective, a template is a group of data sets and lenses and dashboards all inside wrapped up in an app pre-built for you. And templates are the same. It's a pre-made design. So if I came in here and asked for a blank dashboard, that would just take me to this canvas. There's nothing wrong with this. It looks a bit similar to how a Salesforce dashboard would look in terms of in Lightning with the squares. But save yourself a bit of time and work and go for a templated dashboard. So if I click in here, you can see I've got some designs. And these are things that Salesforce have built up over time to help you. So part of that consistency, part of that design thinking, Salesforce have done some of the hard work here for you and have prioritized these things to say, if you're looking to do a performance summary, this is the best one to go for. If you're looking for something where you want to see a graph and then expand it into a table, this is the best to go for. And some of them you'll see have the word smart next to them, and others you won't. So if I come into here and let's say create this details dashboard, and I'm just going to put that in my private app for now, you'll see that I've got all of these widgets that the design has been done for me. I can then just click into these things and do them. With the smart dashboards, it will ask you a couple of questions and get you to pick the data that you want to use, the metrics, the groupings, the filters, and then it will build the entire dashboard for you from scratch. I won't go into that now because obviously it takes a little bit of time for it to run that, but it's really simple to run. And that's basically what B2B Marketing Analytics is. It's building those templates of, it's programmed to say, put this chart here, visualize it in this way, group by this. It's all built in there. But in here, I've got my dashboard. So if I look at my dashboard, you can see I've got different components. So down the left-hand side, I've got all of these items that I can drag onto my canvas. So whether it's a chart or whether it's a text or a different type of filter, I can drag this on. And then once I've got that, I can then add data to it. So if I come in here and say, this is my main chart, click on chart, the first thing it will ask me for is a data set. So this is identical to, let's create a report. What's your record type? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to select this data set that I've got called pipeline merged. And this takes me to the builder. And within here, within this Explorer window, this is similar to building a report. Because it's focused on visualization, it's a little bit different to how Salesforce reports work. However, there's a lot of similarities. Down the left-hand side, I get to choose what I want in there. So, for example, how do I want to group my bars? So maybe I want stage within here. I've got my stages and my numbers within there. If I want to add filters, so if I want to come in here and say, maybe with my business unit, I want the EMEA filter, and then that will filter the data down. And then down the right-hand side, I've got my elements. So I've got my chart. So I don't want to view it as a bar chart. Some of them are more common, things you'd experience normally, such as changing from a bar to a column or something like that. Others, you've got a lot more powerful things in here, the way to visualize. So for example, I remove that filter, give it more values. I can view it as a funnel like I can do in Salesforce, or maybe I want to do this origami chart, which is just another way of visualizing the data in a different way. Once I'm done, I can then click done, and my chart will then appear on my dashboard. And with my dashboard chart, you can see it's a little bit difficult to read at the moment, but there's more customization that I can do. And most importantly, my little pencil icon here is still white, which means if I click on here, I can go back in here, make a change, update it, and go back in there without writing any code. And then I go into the properties and I can say, I've got a dark theme going on, so I change it to dark, and it will know that the chart's on a dark background. It will give me properties that I can play around with. For example, I can move things around, and there's a lot more customization abilities that I have within here to really change the way things look and feel within the dashboard. An example of that is in typical Blue Peter style dashboard that I've already built and been playing around with. So here's a dashboard, and this initially is focusing on sales. So in here, I've got some KPIs in terms of how many new opportunities are coming in, the high level numbers, the visualization around that. And then I've got my forecast of what's going on. So at the moment, this is just looking at everything that's been closed won. And you can see in January, we had a good January. Feb wasn't that great. March really isn't doing that well, but it's not the end of March yet. We've still got stuff in the pipeline. So maybe if I want to look at the stuff that's in that last stage in the opportunity pipeline of that committed stage and bring in those opportunities as well, you can say, oh, actually, we are quite a bit closer to that target, which is that purple line that we've got going on. And I can open it up and say, well, what happens if every proposal that we've got out at the moment comes in? Happy days. Well, I think we'd love that, but it's not likely, but it can come in there. So we can see, right, we've potentially got that. Some of that's probably going to go into next month, but we really need to work on that pipeline for the next couple of months, because as it stands, we're not going to hit target if everything comes in. So this is stuff that you can do, that you can play around with, that gives you the ability to do these types of analysis very quickly and start playing around and drilling down, something that would take a lot longer with inside Salesforce. And the added bonus is all of this is written without writing any code. So these are standard filters. These are just using the declarative tools that we've got to make these changes. So you don't have to be worried about how these changes will affect what you're doing and going, oh, I'm going to have to write code to make all these changes. There's a lot you can do without writing a single line of code. And then looking at here, we can see I've got that a sales pipeline funnel going on, but everything's here to interact with. If I play in it, lets me highlight things, which is similar to what Salesforce does, but if I click into that, everything filters around that to say, if I'm looking at events for that lead source, that's all my pipeline that's been brought in just purely from events. Where are my top accounts and things like that? And everything changes and the numbers change. So this is useful for when I'm looking at saying, okay, I want to just look at a single business unit and see how they're doing specifically, how close they are to target. Or, for example, I could look at a specific campaign. How much is a campaign influence? So if I go to my London Schooling campaign, you can see this is the pipeline that it's brought in. This is the sales pipeline. And I'm not having to build loads and loads of reports. I just have these filters there that I can play around with. But I've also got pages, so I can say, I'll click through to the email engagement and have a look where this email engagement is and say, oh, my high level metrics, again, you can see there's a similar look and feel to it. My KPIs are down the left because I'm thinking left to right. And look at this. And I sort of look at this and see, I can see my opens, what's been going on these emails over the last couple of years. But maybe I want a bit more detail. Maybe I want to drop into that and explore a little bit more and say, I really want to just see that data as data, pure data in a table format. I don't want to visualize it and look and break down those numbers bit by bit. I can do that. I can play around with the numbers a little bit more and play with it. And there's a lot that you can do with it. And if I come in here to create separate pages, they're just sort of a bit like tabs. You can come in here and just create another component, and here's another one that I'm sort of building up. That can show you how you can sort of build things up and work and gradually get better and bigger with it. And these things can then be embedded in pages. So I can come into Salesforce, embed this into a page. I can come in and I can look at a campaign dashboard, a campaign, and say, what's going on with this campaign, so I can interact with this data and see what's going on with it, and have a lot more power within it. And that's where a lot of the power of analytics comes into. So hopefully that will give you a bit of an idea of where we're sort of stepping into. But just as a quick recap, I know we've gone over quite a bit. So apps are basically folders, data sets of pretty much report types, lenses or queries of reports, dashboards everyone's familiar with. Templates are a group of things that are pre-built, ready for you. Data syncing is where it syncs the data from Salesforce into analytics. And then you've got data flows and recipes, which are tools to help manipulate the data and information within there. And then there's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of things that you can leverage on. Obviously, Trailhead being one of them. First get out there, there's a lot of Trailhead badges now. There's 2 super badges. They are definitely on the harder side of things, with code definitely required within them. There's also a great resource called the Learning Map. So if you just go to that link, within the Learning Map, you can find loads of different resources, links to Trailhead, links to other places. Also in London, we've got the London Data Tribe meetup. So that's on Meetup, not on the Trailblazer community. But it's a group that meets every other month, or normally meets every other month, to talk about different analytics things. So if you regularly go to user groups and things like that, it's another one to think about. Then there's obviously the Trailblazer community. There's the one for the London Data Tribe, but then there's also a generic one as well. And for any partners, there's also partner resources. So there is, in the partner community, there's groups within there, there's specific groups, and there's other training material and stuff available specific for partners. So hopefully that's given you a good insight of and reduced a bit of the scariness of analytics when you first get into it. Obviously, there's so much more that you can go into analytics, and I know there's obviously other talks going on about other elements of analytics, but there's so much you can really do within it. So hopefully, if we have enough time, the plan is that we can do a bit of live chat and ask some questions throughout the session. So hopefully we'll have enough time to do some of those, and I'll respond to those questions. But apart from that, thank you very much for listening, and any questions, you can happily reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn or anything like that. And have a great day.
Coacto are a Salesforce implementation company with over 18 years' experience working with Salesforce. With our expertise in Salesforce, supply chain and ERP projects, we're here to support customers and partners in all stages of their implementation. We have a track record of success helping organisations to realise their Salesforce vision. Coact with us to make Salesforce work for you or your customers. Coacto, we realise your Salesforce vision.